Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular council meeting of City of Beaumont City Council, Tuesday, February 8th, 2022, starting at 6:01 p.m. I'll call the meeting to order at this point. My first order of business is to read the land proclamation, which is, we are pleased to be here today on traditional territory of Treaty 6 and the Métis homeland. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We're all treaty people. The peace treaties bind us all. Thank you. I have one proclamation to read this evening before we proceed with our agenda. The proclamation is Black History Month, February 1st to 28th, 2022. Excuse me. Whereas national recognition occurred on December 14th, 1995, and the House of Commons unanimously agreed to a motion presented by the Honorable Jean Augustine to recognize February as Black History Month. And whereas Black History Month sought to level the imbalance in historical perspective and has become an important part of multicultural and anti-racism programs. And whereas Black History Month in Canada is essential since it educates Canadians. Few Canadians know that slavery once existed in Canada, or that many of the British loyalists who came after the American Revolution were Black. And whereas Black History Month recognized the important sacrifices and contributions of Black people to the development of Canada and the world. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Daneluik, do hereby proclaim February 1st to 28th, 2022 as Black History Month in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 24th of January, 2022, and I signed the document. Thank you very much. Thank you, Council. We now will move to the adoption of the agenda. Administration, are there any changes to the agenda, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Administration does not have any additions to the agenda this evening.
Council, any changes from the council on the agenda? I'm assuming not. Thank you. Is there a member of council want to move the motion adoption of the agenda, please?
I can move.
Thank you. Councillor McCook, please proceed.
Move that the February 8th, 2022 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none. Council, I'll ask you to vote accordingly. Ms. Winter, I'm having trouble seeing. Oh, there we are now. Okay, thank you. I'm just counting the votes, so I got to change screens here. That Councillor Tessier, would you wish to vote, please? Can you go down to your reactions at the bottom of your screen and click on that? You'll see a little icon.
Yeah, it's on there, Mayor.
Okay. I don't see it on my screen from my end. I apologize, and Renee, I'm sure you voted. I just can't see it. All I see is your eyebrows. I can't see above that. So your green button is going on me. So, okay, Council, that does pass unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to the consent agenda. We have 3 items suggested to be on the consent agenda this evening. That is 5A, Council's Strategic Plan Meeting, January 22nd, 2022, as well as item 5B, regular council meeting of January 25th, 2022, and 6A, Facilities Joint Use Agreement, City of Beaumont and the Board of Trustees, Black Gold School Division. Council, any questions on the consent agenda? Councillor Munckhof-Swain, I see your hand is up. Please proceed, Sam.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull off 6A, Facilities Joint Use Agreement discussion and the RFD around that. Just a couple of questions I had, please.
Okay. We'll take it off unless someone has an objection. We'll take it off the consent agenda. Seeing no concerns from any of the other council members, we'll proceed with taking 6A off the consent agenda. Thank you. Is there a council willing to move the motion to adopt the consent agenda as amended? Councillor Tessier, would you be willing to make that motion?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Tessier. Go ahead, please.
I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate as presented. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, I'll ask council to vote accordingly. Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Council. Moving on to open forum. I believe there are no open forum items this evening. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no registrations for open forum this evening.
Thank you. Okay, my view is getting weird here. Hang on. Okay, thank you very much. All right. We moved on to open forums been handled. So our first order of business is 6A, business item, which involves 6A, facilities joint use agreement, City of Beaumont and the Board of Trustees. Who from administration will present that, please?
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. I'm Amanda Cuthbert, Manager of Recreation Services. This evening, I'm looking for your approval for the Facilities Joint Use Agreement between the City of Beaumont and the Board of Trustees, Black Gold School Division. A Facilities Joint Use Agreement between the two parties has been in place since July 4th, 1997. An updated agreement with current facilities and operating practices has been prepared for Council's approval. The previous agreement in place was outdated and it did not represent Beaumont's current inventory of facilities. The updated agreement includes updated facilities, times of allowable usage, insurance requirements, terms have been updated, and a dispute resolution has been added. With this agreement, Beaumont Black Gold schools will have access to Beaumont recreation facilities at no cost during school hours and set hours after school for extracurricular activities. Facilities include the arena and multi-purpose rooms at the Ken Nickel, playing fields, tennis courts, Four Seasons Park, outdoor rinks, outdoor turf field. Beaumont Sports and Recreation Center would include the arena, field house, gymnasium, and multi-purpose rooms. Beaumont will have access at no charge to the school gymnasiums, classrooms, and atriums after school hours. This agreement will be reviewed over the next year to ensure the requirements of the Municipal Government Act joint use and planning agreements are satisfied. On January 26, 2022, the Black Gold Board of Trustees reviewed, approved, and signed this joint use agreement. I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Cuthbert. Appreciate that very much. Questions from council. I see Councillor Munckhof-Swain has his hand up. So Sam, you have the floor, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And first off, just want to acknowledge I gave less than zero notice that I wanted to pull this off. So apologies for that. And thanks, Amanda, for being here. So just apologies for that up front. The thing I wanted to talk through about here is this joint use agreement, and the majority of it looks great. But one of the things that has come to my attention and constantly been spoken to me about in the background, and we've tried to push it back to administration, is just the use of the facility for graduation ceremonies. In this joint use agreement doesn't cover that, and so I just wanted to speak a little bit about that, and essentially the background here is the high school has used the LRC in Leduc for many years to host their ceremonies. They did a kind of modified version at the high school there once, but now we've got a facility in Beaumont that can host something like this. But unfortunately, just because of the fee structure and everything that's set up, it's cost prohibitive for us to do that, for the school boards to be able to host grad here. Now, again, I just want to acknowledge that that Paula, Amanda, and your whole team has worked really well with that committee, and they're very excited to be able to potentially host their grad later this year. But the costs compared to the LRC are significant, and I don't know if this is the right venue to have that. But as part of the joint use agreement, I'd like for us to be able to see this is kind of a one-time thing. That I think we should include as part of this joint use agreement, where there are some fees that are attached to the school board, to the planning committee for the grad, and I think that we should look at either waiving them or seeing what's more reasonable for them to be able to host it here. I hate the thought of us spending $30 million on a facility, and I know it's not designed for this specifically. but it has the option to be able to do that. And it just seems a bit off for me that we've got a Beaumont graduation class who could have to go to the Leduc essentially to hold their thing because of our facility is outpricing it. So I'll leave it there maybe for some comments from you, Amanda, around that. But what I'd like to see is if we could put some sort of clause in here that speaks to that. And I know that this is not the meeting to kind of debate and go back and forth on this. So ultimately, it's most likely going to be a motion for me to defer it back to committee of the whole or something like that to dive into this. So I'll leave it there to see if you had any comments on that.
Sure. I think looking at this agreement, when we worked with admin from Black Gold, we were looking at the joint use agreement and really that usage for the school is during the day for the school programs. So we didn't really discuss any events outside and not events hosted by the parent committees, things like that. So that's not a discussion we actually had with their admin. I think it is a good point. I wonder if it's worthwhile having some more discussions. I do know that we will be looking at this agreement as part of a larger agreement when it comes to the joint use and planning agreements. I think that will be happening over the next year. So I don't know if that's the time or we can engage with their admin, over the next couple months.
Yeah, and I don't want to, I mean, like I said, generally this is good, but I think this is the opportunity to look at that. And just for context, there's a fee for, essentially person hours to take the field turf down and to put it back in. And then there's also a fee for that to actually, not for the person hours, but for the actual labor of actually taking the turf out. So it just seemed strange. And I know that this is a bit unorthodox coming through a council and trying to push them back to you guys. And I know you've had these conversations with them, but I just think that if this is the right avenue to do that, and I'll take direction from administration. If this is not, then we can go another way. I don't want to hold up all the great work that's been here, but I just thought this was the opportune time to ask that question. I did talk about this during the budget with Mr. Suter around the fees and charges. Was that the right place? And then the conversation was, well, no, not really here. Let's talk. We got a joint use agreement, so I didn't want to miss that opportunity to talk about that. In essence, I want to make sure that we have Beaumont grad class graduating here in Beaumont and not having to leave the city. So, I'll take your direction on this, Amanda, in terms of where we think that conversation might be best.
Sure. So I can take it back to the Black Golds and Min, and then we can have some more discussions and then bring this back to council.
I see before I proceed any further, I'll ask CEO Schwartz to make a comment and then I'll come to you, Steve, with your question. CEO Schwartz, Mike, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Daneluik, through the rest of council. Perhaps, Sandy, you could help us with a couple options, whether it be to amend this specific agreement or whether it be to come back with a specific report that addresses the issue that Councillor Munckhof-Swain is raising. Procedurally, what would be the best route for us to go?
Thank you, CEO Schwartz. I think both options are available to council. If Councillor Munckhof-Swain would like to make a motion to amend the agreement, we could have council debate that motion and amend it. Another option would be to approve the agreement and make a subsequent motion to have administration prepare a report on that particular item of the high school grads and options for addressing that. That might help get the councillor more of what he's looking for, but that is within council's discretion.
So Sam, before I come back to you, Steve, I'll see what Sam may want to do. I'm assuming that the grad committee already has the Leduc facility booked for this coming this spring, and I'm assuming that we're talking about trying to change things maybe for next year. I'm assuming, is that correct, Sam? To your knowledge? No,
they've actually worked really well with Paul and that team to book a space in the rec center coming up. And so they have that there, and thankfully Paul and Amanda and co, they waived that initial booking fee that was cost prohibitive because they don't have the cash in hand at this stage. So that was great. So they do have a temporary space in there, but this is more kind of long term as well. It's not just to solve this problem,
right?
And so I do appreciate the comments from Sandy around the process here. I'm a little reluctant just to throw this out here and change a policy on the fly with council here, but also don't want to send the admin back to do a bunch of work. I don't think it's much, and maybe it's just maybe the approach here is that we. And again, I don't want to presume the vote for folks, but if council approves the policy, and then it's maybe we can just amend it potentially down the road if admin sees value in that. So I'll stop there. I know Steve wanted to jump in, so I'll leave it there.
So Steve, are you on this topic or a different subject on this particular issue, on this document?
Yeah, no, I can weigh in on this, and then I have another question on the document different for after. So I'll split it into two.
Okay, so we'll take your question first on this issue, and then we'll resolve it, and then we'll have your secondary question coming up, okay? So please proceed.
I'm just wondering, has administration received this feedback from the planning committee? I'm very happy that Councillor Munckhof-Swain has brought this forward, but I'm also concerned that if the committee hasn't brought this concern or ask or issue to administration, I'm concerned how come we haven't heard this through administration and it's being brought up tonight? Just wondering if administration could speak to that a bit, please, and thank you.
The planning committee for the graduation class, is that the committee you're referring to? Yes, that's correct. Yes, there's been some communications between that committee and Paul Suter, as well as our bookings team here at the BSRC. So what we're trying to help them with is we did waive that original deposit fee for that group so that they could get in and get that location secured for them, and then also recommended that they look to and apply for a grant through the grants committee. That application deadline is coming up, I believe, for April 1st. So that's what we've been trying to help and work with them on. So that's been the communication.
Yeah, good. And thanks for the catch up there. I felt just a little bit void of information here. Councillor Munckhof-Swain is trying to solve a problem and be proactive, which it seems at face value that I support, but not knowing what other things administration has directed or suggested they do was a void for me. So, what I was going to suggest is, we have that community grant funding program for this type of reason, but that program also was frustrating for people to ask for money from the city just to give it back to the city. So, I'll stop there, Mayor.
Thanks, Steve. We'll come back to your second question once we wrap up how to proceed. So the discussion seems to be revolving around, I think we could probably, if council decides to pass this recommendation this evening and come back and amend it after the fact. Are you okay with that, Sam, procedurally speaking?
Yeah, maybe I'll seek one more piece of advice from administration around this. I don't know if it's as easy as just kind of waving a pen and just adding a clause 4 into this document that says that Black Gold has the ability to rent the BSRC on one time for an annual grad class type thing. I don't want us to go through that, because then no one else here on council has time to think through that and look through that and make a decision. That, I mean, it's a small financial impact. It's only around $5,000, but in order to be able to raise that's challenging. So I think the way that I'm leaning is to pass this, but I don't or to vote on this, but I don't want to lose this thread. And so maybe it's an opportunity for administration and to kind of look more further into this. And if we can't figure it out this year, then maybe it's a discussion that comes through at budget or having to be a notice of motion. But I don't think it needs to be that formal. But I'll take direction from administration. I just want to make sure that they've heard that concern, and if they look at it and they bring back an amended policy. But I'm also cognizant that if we don't direct administration to do anything, then they're probably not going to do it. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, before I come to you, Councillor Barnhart, so your hand is up. Ms. Bourget, do you have any comments on procedure for us? Best way to proceed most expediently? Any thoughts you may have?
I believe Ms. Winter is going to speak to it.
Oh, thank you. Ms. Winter, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Depending on which way council wants to go, if they don't want to hold up the joint use agreement and signing of it and approving of it this evening, as Ms. Bourget had mentioned, there could be a subsequent motion that Councillor Munckhof-Swain could put on the floor for a vote to refer the agreement back to administration to prepare a report on the feasibility and the options for Black Gold to be able to use facilities for the graduations for these students. It wouldn't hold up the agreement, and then it would be a report that could come back, and then that amendment could come back at any time for that agreement.
Okay, before I ask Sam for a response, Councillor Barnhart, your hand is up. Are you interjecting on this particular discussion or something else? Councillor
Thank you,
Barnhart.
Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I think it's related to this one in terms of process,
Okay, go ahead, please.
if I may. So I'm more inclined to agree with the way it is written now, because that has been the practice, and I think it's come out to be fairly well accepted on both the school board, Black Gold School Board, and the city's perspective. When we open it up now to the discussion, and I support the direction of having our grad here in Beaumont, I'm thinking we do have other events similar to this that the other school boards may also be wanting the same consideration. So I just feel this is kind of quick, and the administration maybe has other information, both in terms of cost and precedent setting, that we might want to consider before we make a final decision. So I'm just, it's happening quite quickly. I'm a little bit like Councillor Daneluik. I'm feeling that this, I support it in principle, but I'm just not sure we have given the administration enough time to bring forward the potential impact of that decision.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I know Steve's got another question coming later on, different topic. I haven't forgot about you, Steve. So Sam, are we prepared maybe to do a motion at a later time? We'll just proceed based on what's in front of us from as far as this discussion goes?
Yeah, for what Ms. Winter suggested, I think that's a great suggestion. And again, I didn't want to put this in front of folks straight away and force a vote on this. I think it's worth to take a look at and fully support Councillor Barnhart's comments around other school boards and similar type things. I just think, you know, we want to be able to have those major celebrations here in Beaumont. So yeah, we've got a motion that's kind of here, and so I'll be prepared to make that once we go through the rest of the other questions on this piece. So thank you everyone for bearing with me on that, and again, administration, apologies for the late notice.
Okay, good. So it's on our radar now, which is a good thing. So we can look at proceeding, but I will come to you now, Steve, for your follow-up question, please. Please proceed, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Since we're having this conversation, I just wanted to look to administration for a little bit of guidance for residents. How are the Black Gold facilities booked for after hours, and who has access to booking those facilities? The reason I ask is because prior to COVID, some of the feedback I was receiving from residents and groups is that time slots that had been available were no longer available, and that there were talks of, you know, we've had this time booked forever and now it's not available, and those types of things. So I'm just wondering, what is the process for groups, people, Beaumontonians booking these spaces?
Ms. Cuthbert?
For booking the schools. So there is a, I think Black Gold has recently streamlined their facility booking. So previously they had different people taking care of bookings for each separate school. So they've streamlined that. So there's now one facility booking person. So one email, one phone number, that one person is taking care of that. So I think that will get streamlined. So we can certainly try to have that I don't have that contact right now, unfortunately, to share with everyone, but you know, our facility booking clerk would be definitely able to help if people were having challenges finding the right contact there through Black Gold. But it is streamlined, so I do believe now that the schools are looking at opening up to the public that it should be a little bit easier for everybody to book space there.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And I'm just asking the question now because the conversation is here now. That feedback is over 2 years old, obviously. So yeah, so thank you for enlightening us there a bit, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further questions from Council regarding this particular report, the Facilities Joint Use Agreement? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to proceed. I think Councillor Munckhof-Swain was willing to make that motion, so we'll put up on the screen for you there. when it's available.
Sorry, I just want to be triple clear on the process.
Okay.
We're gonna assume, maybe I shouldn't assume, we're gonna vote on this. We're gonna vote on this joint use agreement in front of us, and then I'm hoping there is an opportunity to make a motion after that to refer, and we'll get the language, and it's here in front of me. But then we'll refer. So I just want to be triple clear that that's our plan. Is that right?
Yes, Councillor Munckhof-Swain, I can speak to that. So we will have council vote on adopting the agreement as presented in the report, and Ms. Winter will be able to present that motion. And then we'll have a second motion on a report on options as you had described, but we'll just need a moment to get that ready.
So if you want, Bill, I can move a motion on the first part.
Yes, let's just proceed that way for now. While they prepare the second motion, we'll take the first one. It's there now.
So I'll move that the facilities joint use agreement as set out in attachment 1 of the February 8, 2022 report between the City of Beaumont and the Board of Trustees, Black Gold School Division, be approved, and that the Mayor on behalf of Council sign the agreement.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion. Council, any members of council have any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote, please. And bear with me for a moment, council. For some reason, half of you are no longer on my screen on the right-hand side. So I've got to just scroll down and account for everybody. Just give me a moment, please.
You're good. And just for the record, Sandy, we can see your screen here.
Okay. Yeah, I now see all hands. Thank you. That motion passed unanimously. Thank you, council. And we'll give Ms. Winter a moment or two to bring up the second motion we talked about a moment ago.
We're just drafting that right now, Mayor. It'll just be a couple of seconds here.
Take your time. We'll get it right, and that's all good. Sam, I'll ask you to make that second motion as well, Sam, when it's prepared, for ease of continuity. Thank you. And I apologize, council. For some reason, when my screen goes to the motion in front of me, on the right-hand side, half of you are going away for some reason. So that's a new little technology glitch. I got to get that figured out maybe, but it could be something on my screen. I'm not sure, but bear with me on getting the votes correct. So, and Renee, for some reason, I'm only seeing the top of your head for some reason. Your voting button is never on my screen. So if I ask you verbally, I apologize. I just can't see your green button for some reason. I see you, but I can't see the button. It's weird. But I know you're there.
No worries, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mayor. We're ready here. I'll just share the screen.
Gotta love technology. Thank you, Ms. Winter. Sam, when you're ready, please. The motion is on the screen. Thank you.
I'll move that administration prepare a report on the options to allow for the Black Gold School Division to use the BSRC facilities for graduation ceremonies.
Thank you. Council, discussion on the motion.
So I recognize that's my motion. It doesn't talk about the fee structure, but I think administration understands the intent behind it. So, I mean, they're allowed to use it. They can pay for it. I don't want to recraft the motion, but I just want to, I think administration gets what I'm saying there, but report on options to allow them.
Sam, take a moment and we'll just have Ms. Winter maybe, or Ms. Bajega interact, make sure we get it correct. And we'll just take a moment. I'm sure we'll get it done right, and then we'll proceed.
We can, Ms. Winter, we could add use without cost or at a reduced cost or something to that effect, if that would capture Councillor Munckhof-Swain's intent.
Yeah, I think it's just maybe adding financial in front of options.
Okay, thank you.
Options. Okay. We'll wait for that to be crafted, and then I'll come to Councillor Tessier and then Councillor Barnhart for questions on the motion.
You can probably go to them while they're pulling that up.
Okay, if you don't mind, Councillor Tessier, Renee, you have the floor for your question.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm just making sure. So this is for this year. Like we still have time for this year for the Black Gold to have graduation at the BSRC, right? Okay. That's good. I obviously totally support this as someone that graduated here in Beaumont and didn't get to celebrate. It was a town back then, but there's tons of families and tons of people that get to come to this graduation, and everyone goes out for supper and do that type of thing. So it'd be great to host it in our own city now. So yeah, love it. Just, do we need a timeline on this or anything to bring that report back, or just maybe a couple process questions, I guess, is all, just to clarify so that we do get this on time type of thing. So yeah, thanks for bringing this forward.
Thank you. I have a comment, but I'll go to Councillor Barnhart first. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And for the record here, I do support this as well, having had a daughter graduate and having to attend that in Edmonton. I much would have preferred to have had the graduation here in Beaumont. But I also wonder if, for clarity's sake, there may not be too many people who would consider graduation to mean kindergarten graduation, but could we put high school graduation there just for clarity purposes? Just to be clear, so we don't have confusion for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. Councillor Munckhof-Swain, are you okay with the friendly amendment to your motion?
Absolutely. Thanks for that additional add there, Councillor Barnhart, and again, Ms. Winter and Cohen behind the scenes for pulling this together with no notice.
Thank you. My only question, Kathy, your hand's still up. Another follow-up question, or you're done for questions? You're okay? Thank you. 1 second, I'll scroll down, make sure nobody else has any questions. Councillor Miller, Councillor McCook, no questions. Councillor Daneluik, okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could we add a timeline, please? That by, I'm not sure what would be appropriate. I might start with end of Q2 of 2022. I just want to make sure we give administration a sense of when council expects that back.
So grad is June, but I mean, it doesn't mean you guys will wait till that date. I think that's fine to take the pressure off. And if you're able to solve it this year, again, administration's already been more than accommodating for this. And so if we can solve it this year, great. But this is looking at multi-years. So I think ideally they can figure, administration has a chance to check in with Black Gold prior to the event, so that the fundraising committee has a better sense of the cost they're looking for. But I think Q2 is reasonable.
You okay with that, Sam?
You bet.
Okay, thank you very much. My only question, or my comment, is more than a question, actually. To my understanding, only Black Gold has approached the city with respect to using city facilities for the grad ceremony. I'm not sure if the Catholic or the French school boards have approached us any kind of grad facility. So this does speak to Black Gold specifically. The other school boards are in our city, of course, too. So I don't want to muddy the waters by changing the motion. I'm prepared to support it going forward. Just the question is, how can we accommodate if the other school boards come asking for the similar situation? That can discuss maybe down the board with administration at this point, but just put on the table for argument's sake. But I'm prepared to support the motion as presented. So see any further discussion on the motion before I call for the vote. Kathy, are you hand up or just adjusting your screen? You're okay? All right, thank you. Okay, see no more hands up for questions or discussion. I'll ask the council to vote, please. 1, 2, 3, I see 4. Excuse me 1 second, I'm just going to scroll down. Steve, I cannot see your green button. Can you put your hand up? Thank you very much. Council, that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, council. And we look forward to that report from administration, hopefully before end of Q2, but sometime before end of Q2. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is 6B, Don Sparrow Lake report to council. Who will speak from administration, please, on this particular topic? Mr. Lewicki, is that you?
That's me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome, Aaron. You have the floor, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. Thank you for the opportunity to bring forward this report to council. Council made a motion on January 11th that by the end of January 2022, administration provide a report that explains the rationale for light timing and fish signage placement at Don Sparrow Lake, and that the report include any possible options for expanding the current skating surface at the lake and providing more picnic tables. As directed, we have prepared a report outlining the rationales and options for their associated costs. Currently, the light is illuminated at Don Sparrow between 4 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. Precise adjustments to this light are not possible due to the age of the timer. However, newer style of timers are commercially available, which provide a greater level of accuracy. Extending the operation of the lighting to later in the evening may result in residents being impacted by fugitive lighting generated. LED options are available to provide more focused light on the skating area. If improved lighting design is pursued, public consultation can be sought to identify the community's preference for light timing. Council also asked on the rationale for ice fishing signage locations. Ice fishing signage is placed in locations to communicate to lake users that portions of the lake is reserved for ice fishing. The overall shape of the lake has a natural midpoint, which provides a logical point of delineation between ice fishing and ice skating recreation. Regarding expansion of the ice skating surface on Don Sparrow Lake, increasing the overall size of the skating area will require more ice depth measurements and may need to occur more frequently and require greater levels of maintenance. The skating surface at Don Sparrow is currently configured as a loop, as everybody's aware, as indicated in attachment 1, but could be expanded to provide a more clearly defined space for hockey and or figure skating. Expanding the ice surface will increase the maintenance requirements to keep the ice in acceptable condition and would impact the overall resources available to maintain other existing skating surfaces. An option to increase the skating surface to include a separate area for hockey or figure skating is presented in attachment 2. And costs for the associated options are provided in the attached table. We have the supply of a new light timer, installation of a focused LED light, and contractor seasonal labor to accommodate the additional maintenance on the lake ice surface. That is what I had to say about the report. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Lucky. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Questions from council. Councillor Miller, you have a hand up. Ashley, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mayor Daneluik. Thank you, Aaron, for that presentation, for your report. I've spoken to a few residents that were initially impacted by this or impacted. And what I mean by that is they were the ones that were utilizing this Don Sparrow Lake and noticing the lights going out early. So I guess my comment is the lights were actually going out at 7:30 before, and your report is stating that they're going out at 9:30. So whatever has been done in the interim to have them go off at 9:30 and not 7:30 is working. So I certainly wouldn't want to have them on later than that. That was never the suggestion. If they're going off at 9:30, that's perfect and that's great. So that was kind of the ask from residents, was that, you know, at 7:30 it was just a little early. So like I said, whatever's happened in between that time has magically fixed itself. So secondly, I'm not sure if you're suggesting that the supply and installation of a new timer is actually necessary because it is so old, or if this was just an option. So I'm not sure if that is actually a need. And thirdly, regarding the surface for skating, I was actually out there yesterday to take a look. So the loop is done, which is wonderful, but it is quite wide. And then there is an actual surface that's kind of like subsequent to it. I'm not sure if that's been done by residents. As far as some of them have mentioned, it hasn't been, but there is actually enough space out there, and there is little guys skating around with their sticks and having like a little game of hockey. So that being said, I absolutely appreciate this report, but it seems as though things have somewhat fixed themselves. There's also been 3 new picnic tables, as mentioned in this report, that have been brought out there. So things seem to be running smoothly. And I certainly wouldn't want to go ahead with a $35,000 or even $20,000 cost, even $2,000 cost if it wasn't necessary. So I just wanted to make those comments that it seems to be rolling smooth at this point, and residents are happy. So thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Miller, to answer some of your questions. So the light timer option was put forth in case there was a requirement to change the lighting further or more accurately. I'll be honest, I'm not sure that we changed the light timing, or if something happened, or if there was some daylight savings thing. I don't think it's that complex. I don't know that we've, but if it's working, I think that's the important thing. I was thinking that 9:30 was probably a good time as well. On the light, same thing. I mean, I think if the light, if we wanted it on later, we would probably want to consider a more focused light. But if the current situation is working, you know, these were just options in case council had any concerns about changing timing. For the ice surface, I might call on my my other manager, Josh, here. I don't know that we maintain any additional portion outside the loop that I'm aware of. That may be, I know I've been out there too, and I've seen where people have been clearing little spots of ice, and I don't believe that's us. But Josh, are you aware of any additional areas that have been cleared?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I think to Councillor Miller's note there, directly, I guess, on the southeastern portion of the lake where the picnic tables are set up, just the way our snow clearing equipment drives onto the lake, it creates a bit of a bulge there. And I think some residents did clear some snow there originally a month or so ago. So we try to clear what's been cleared and maintain it as best we can. So yeah, I think just naturally as the season progresses, the loop gets bigger and bigger, because as we clear, it floods more and more space. So that's just an outcome of just what's been happening out there. And insofar as the light timer, as Councillor Miller suggested, I believe we had a service request that came in outside of the council motion just for us to check the timer lights. So we adjusted it as best we could. It's a very much like a kitchen timer that you adjust. It's so something a little more modern would be useful, but not necessary.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for the response back to Councillor Miller. Ashley, any other comments at this point or questions?
No, thank you very much.
Well, the idea of having magic done by council administration, we'll take that at face value. That it's all the magic is all us, and we'll take that credit. We get credit once in a while, and today's our day for magic. So, Councillor Newkirk, you have some questions. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. So for me, I'm all for continually improving amenities for residents. Council's received and continues to receive feedback surrounding Dawn Sparrow Lake. We've had presentations to council, for instance. I'm looking to learn what kinds of feedback the city has received on this area surrounding light and skating. The reason I'm asking is because council's spending time on operational items like this when the community, maybe doesn't feel heard, and actions aren't taken when feedback is received. So as Councillor Miller pointed out, since the conversation started, improvements have been made around, light timing. Someone's did that, or something has changed somewhere, and more picnic tables have been delivered. So I guess my concern is that, we're sitting at a council meeting talking about light timing and picnic tables, because feedback from residents through to the city isn't getting change at the residents' request. So here we are at a council meeting discussing picnic tables and light timing. So one of my main concerns here is that feedback from residents is misdirected and maybe not getting where it needs to be within the city. So I know we've had direct presentations to council. So that was some feedback that was received and heard. And I don't think actions were directly made based upon that feedback that night. But, we fast forward to now where Councillor Miller's brought this forward. We've put time into a report. And, so that's what I have to say. There's questions that can be answered in there around, what is the right way for feedback to get in and be actioned upon. And Mr. Lewicki has suggested the service portal as being a great place for it. And that's where I always direct people to, but just wanting to hear some comments back from administration on what is the right way for residents to get feedback in that, that they can get something back on so that we're not discussing picnic tables at a council meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Lewicki, would you care to?
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, to your point, I do think the service portal is I hate to belabor the issue, but I think the service portal is one of our better ways to have citizens put in a request or have an issue with certain things across the city. It's a method that allows us to track incoming concerns or complaints and be able to handle them in a way that we can track them effectively. Now, I mean, that doesn't mean that, our recent snow clearing activities, for instance, I mean, we were getting handwritten letters, phone calls, emails, service requests, they were coming in. And we try to deal with those to the best of our abilities. And I think that the best way is the service request, and I open it to the rest of administration if they have other solutions that might be acceptable or an improvement.
Let me just give me a second here. Seeing no other comments, Steve, I'm just wondering, I hear what you're saying, but I do think the service portal does seem to be the best way to do it. Perhaps you might consider your question being put into maybe a written councillor inquiry to maybe have administration provide some feedback at a later time for you. Would you be agreeable to that?
Yeah, I'll craft something in and put it in for an inquiry bill. And I think, that's one way that council can continue to talk about this. But, the crux of my position and what I'll just put out there for administration is similar to what Mr. Lewicki said, is that continual improvement on how we receive feedback and what we do with it, right? So, hearing that you're getting handwritten letters and all of that kind of stuff on snow removal is encouraging, because that means that people are reaching out, right? The worst thing is when people have concerns and then they don't reach out, and then, we can't read minds either, right? So anyhow, getting and receiving feedback is one thing, but actioning on it and deciding when to action on it when we receive it is a whole another thing. And I know we can't make decisions based upon one or two people's thoughts here all the time, but I do think that gathering the feedback and making sure it's not misdirected as it comes into the city is something that we can continually help residents to or point residents and help them with. So thank you.
Yeah, I think, Steve, that's a good point. I would ask you maybe in your inquiry to just have administration reply back on the number of inquiries they got and how many were replied back to. I know we take great pride administration to reply back to our citizens and residents on their questions. So maybe just it's good to show them exactly how many inquiries did get responded to and that sort of thing to keep the accountability up and the communication level to work with the residents. I look forward to your inquiry, Steve. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions from council on this particular report on Don Sparrow Lake? Seeing none, I'll ask Councillor Miller if she's prepared to move this report to be accepted as information when the motion is on the screen.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I can move that. The February 8th, 2022 report rationale for light timing and ice fishing signage, as well as options for expansion of the skating surface and providing more picnic tables at Don Sparrow Lake be received as information.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Discussion on the motion, Council. Again, seeing none on the screen, I'll ask council to please vote accordingly. And I'm now seeing that now as all being a unanimous vote. Thank you, council. Appreciate that. The next item of business is 6C, options for lighting at outdoor rinks. I'm assuming, Mr. Lewicki, this is your dance as well?
You're correct, Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much. You have to listen to me one more time.
That's fine. Thank you.
Again, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to bring forward this report to council. Council made a motion on December 7th that by the end of January 2022, administration provide a report with options and costs for adding portable lights for outdoor unboarded rinks, Montelay, St. Vital Nature Park, and Montrose. As directed by council, administration has prepared a report with 2 options for consideration, as well as the costs associated for each option. The unboarded rinks currently have no permanent fixed lighting. 2 options are being presented for the addition of temporary portable lighting for the outdoor unboarded rinks. The report includes rental options only, and no purchases of equipment were considered. The purchase of light towers would be significantly more than the rental cost over the short term. The 2 options include, first option would be rental and installation of portable diesel-powered light stands. And our second option is rental and installation of portable solar-powered light stands. And costs are provided accordingly for both options, with the solar option being $35,900 and the diesel option at $49,200. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewicki. Open up to questions from councillors on the speaker report. Councillor Tessier, you have the floor, Renee.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just a question. So how much was the lights at the library again? I know it's one single stand. Do I remember it costed $22,000 for some reason? Sorry to put you on the spot, but does anyone remember that number?
Through the mayor to Councillor Tessier, and I might ask Josh to help out with this one, Mr. Gale here. But I know the actual lights, the light fixture itself was $13,000. I do recall maybe that the overall installation was over $20,000. Josh, are you familiar?
Thanks, Mr. Lewicki. I would have to do some digging here, but I want to say you're in the ballpark.
Okay, so for the smaller outdoor unboarded rinks, one of those isn't suited. Obviously the timeline's increased, but for a rental cost, when the more bang for our buck would be a permanent one, or what do you think?
Through the mayor, the mayor,
go ahead.
To Councillor Tessier. So I think it's important to note that this is the cost to light all of these rinks. So when you think about one light standard, don't quote me on let's say $22,000, $25,000. These costs are to light the rinks, Montelay, Blue, St. Vital, Nature Park, Montrose. So there's 5 light standards included in there. So if you took your $22,000 and times it by 5, and there may be other requirements for lighting, I don't know, they may need a transformer, a service. So those costs continue to rise. It would be likely over $100,000 to install permanent lighting at all of these parks, and that's probably a low estimate. So this option comes in as a you roll these temporary lights in. We can remove them as needed on a seasonal basis. We could also look at purchasing these at a later date if it's a successful program. But the idea here was to provide, a temporary solution that effectively solves the issue.
For sure. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's it for me, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Miller, you have the floor, followed by Councillor Barnhart. Ashley, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. A couple questions to do with the solar light towers. Can you explain, what exactly is the length of power that these are going to provide, because as far as I've understood, solar light towers are not typically the best option, just because especially in the winter, they may not generate or they may not get enough power throughout the day with the lack of sun in order to generate enough light during the night. So if you could just touch on that. And then secondly, I may have missed it in this report, but if, for example, we were to go with the option of the diesel powered generators, would you need to do public engagement due to the noise? And what would that look like? I'm concerned about the noise. You know, we tackle one issue, which is lighting. So then we have lighting, but now we've got residents complaining that there's a generator making noise all the time. So if you could just touch on those two topics there, that'd be great.
Well, thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Miller. Basically, I'm probably going to have to ask Mr. Gale to step in and talk about the service limits of the solar lighting. I know they're definitely not as common as their diesel counterparts, but of course they are quieter and offer some definite advantages from a refueling perspective and so on. Josh, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, you bet, Aaron. So it was a bit challenging to source a solar light stand that was designed and engineered and CSA approved for use in Canada. And luckily, we did find a company out of Calgary. They do the assembly and storage in Rocky Mountain House. These are designed for Alberta climate, and the solar panels are sized such to handle the limited sunlight in the daytime here up in Alberta. So the manufacturer does consider that. So Councillor Miller, you're correct. A lot of the light stands that are more readily available, they wouldn't provide enough battery storage to last the whole night. But these ones are being used actively in the northern climates and have been successful by all accounts to provide the lighting for an entire period of time that we're going to be requiring them.
Thank you, Mr. Gale. Does that answer your question, Councillor Miller?
It does. Just one last thing. Could you kind of give a description of how large these solar light panels are? As far as I've researched, they're quite big. Is that correct? So another concern is the placement of these, vandalism, you know, any of those options, maybe have those been considered?
Through the mayor to Councillor Miller, as far as I'm not sure on the dimensions of the actual light panels, and Josh might be able to speak to that in a minute. But we do have, as part of our costs, we do have regular inspections and fencing for around these units so that they would be less likely tampered with. I mean, obviously there's no surefire way to make sure someone's not messing with it, but the idea is that we would have fencing around and they would have regular inspections to ensure that they're operational and safe, you know, for usage. Josh, are you able to speak to this? I'm not sure that we have the size, but
well, I mean, the photos, I've never asked for specific dimensions, but the photos it's equivalent to a diesel powered light stand that you're seeing in construction sites. The actual solar array is probably somewhere in the order of 6 feet wide by 7 to 8 feet tall. There's 6 different solar arrays that are in a package together. Which is why we would put security fencing around it to keep people off of the unit, because you're right, it could present an opportunity for someone to climb on it or vandalize, right?
Right. Yeah. We don't need to get in the specifics. I just thought if you had it offhand, that'd be great information to know. I'm done with my questions for now. Thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Miller, one question I apologize I didn't answer was the noise and the engagement. I would suggest that we would do some sort of consultation with surrounding residents, as there would be a noise component to operating this equipment. So just to answer that question, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Lewicki. That's really good to know. Residents would appreciate that, I'm sure.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I go on to Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor McCook, I have one quick question. Mr. Lewicki, I believe, to make sure I'm correct, that there'd be one light tower per rink. Is that correct? That's the anticipation of this, one light tower per rink?
To the mayor, yes. The costs include one light standard per per unboarded rink area. Right. One thing to note at this point, that due to weather and the installation of the netting at the Montelay rink, we probably would not consider putting a light out there until that was completed. The other factor that could be considered as well is there is light out there for the boarded rinks. So we have included a cost here for a light standard at that location as well.
Good. Thank you very much. Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor McCook. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report as well to the administration. I think my question is kind of stimulated by the comments made by Councillor Miller regarding consultation and some form of engagement with the community. And when I thought about it, the lighting may not be as problematic depending on where the ice rink is located in relation to people's houses and bedrooms versus living rooms, et cetera. And I do recall having been consulted by a citizen previously, and I don't know if this was I think it was a private group brought in some lighting to the Milieu Park, not this year, but maybe the year before. And the light was shining right into their front room. And so I'm just a little bit worried that we would do this without consulting, that instead what I read in the report is that I'm sorry, my screen froze up, but I believe it says consultation would be more in the case of informing the residents what the timing is and when it's happening, rather than consulting with them to ask them if this is something that they would like to see. So I'm wondering if we're moving a little too quickly on this. Maybe this is something we consider for next year, and we do consultation in a more of a actually consulting, not informing way based on our public engagement policy. So those are my thoughts right now. I'm not seeing the urgency for moving on this right now.
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart.
Yes.
Part of the we were asked to bring this report back fairly quickly, and so part of our logic was to try to show that if we wanted to put this in place quickly, we could. That doesn't mean that, that the diesel option, it probably would be a good idea to do further consultation if that was the option that if that was an option that council would choose. However, we were trying to show that these are options we could employ fairly quickly if that was the desired direction from council.
And just if I could, Mr. Mayor, the motion on the floor is to accept it, I believe, is information at this point, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, okay. I would accept it as information, but I would not be moving on it myself at this point. I would be not in favor of approving either of these options without consultation.
Thank you, Councillor. I will caution Councillor. We're getting a little bit into the weeds on this one, just a little bit. We're not too deep yet, but we're getting close. So let's have Councillor McCook suggest her question, and I'll do a bit of a wrap up and see where we're at with this. Okay, but the report does say there's implications for the budget to move on this quickly, which I'm not sure anybody's open the budget again on this item. So we'll have to see about that. But Councillor McCook, Catherine, you have the floor, please.
Yeah, Kathy touched a little bit on kind of my concerns as well. It was more, how much are we hearing from residents that they really truly want this and want this right now, versus what would the impacts be on residents of having the lights and stuff in regards to like the lights spray and effects as well as the sound. and stuff. So those were kind of my concerns. I appreciate the reports, and I agree with Kathy. I'm okay to move to accept it as information. Just not ready to move on anything yet either. So Kathy kind of clarified my concerns as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. Appreciate that very much. Seeing no further Councillors McCook, sorry, your hand just popped up. Please proceed, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. I've kind of been listening intently here. I would like to find a way to get some light onto at least some of these rinks in the near future. So I really support the intention of Councillor Miller bringing this forward. I'm ready to accept it as information for sure. But, past that, I'm just struggling a little bit on how we work to bring something to life. So, that's kind of where my head's at now. I just wanted to, say that I do support, the intent here. And I just can't think of a way that we move this forward tonight that isn't a little bit too quick. So that's just my thoughts that I wanted to share here quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Having said that, I'm not sure Mr. Dowler is on the phone this evening. I do see him here. So I'm wondering, I know the report does say this would have budget implications to proceed with either option or any options in a smaller version. So the question might be, if Mr. Dowler, I see you're on the line. If I may ask the question, so if council were to receive this report as information, that's fine. If we were somehow inclined to try and do something this year, budget implications would be implied in terms of tax increase. For example, if you did 5,000, I'm not budget for right now, 5,000 for outdoor lighting. It's not part of our budget right now. So it would have an implication on the budget, would it not? Could you give us some thoughts on how that would affect the budget, or what the options may be to do this after reports were received as information, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll apologize up front if my internet connection is a little slow here. So if I cut out, just let me know somehow. For your question with regards to the budget implications, yeah, absolutely. If this was something that council wanted to support as an ongoing, what I'll call a service enhancement, the recommendation from administration would be tax levy funded. And in order to do that, a subsequent motion could come after the fact, given some further consideration by council based on what was provided this evening. And we can always do it as part of the spring budget adjustment process. So there's a bit of time with regards to that. However, of course, if you wanted to bring the lights in to have an impact in the winter season, what's left of the winter season, I guess, the timing might be a little bit more urgent than the April report. If council wanted to do something on an interim basis, as a trial, then you're looking at one-time funding. Probably as a recommendation, administration would suggest the financial stabilization reserve. And then we could bring something back as part of the budget 2023 for further consideration to then include it as part of the ongoing expenses of the organization.
Thank you, Mr. Dowler. That explanation was very helpful. So a question could be, could council toss this onto the agenda for the committee of the whole for a general discussion on this coming Tuesday to maybe determine if we did want to do something in this winter season, what we could do, what the cost might be, and have a general discussion on it on Tuesday? That'd be a possibility. I know we're trying to finalize our agenda for the committee of the whole next Tuesday. Could that be done, Mr. Butler or Ms. Bujaya or Ms. Winter? Comments on procedurally? Could we add it to the agenda for general discussion on Tuesday with some idea of what the cost might be? Is that possible? And we can move on to accept the report.
I'll let the experts weigh in. Either I think Ms. Winter will take this one. Thanks.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor, go ahead, Ms. Winter.
No, you go ahead, Ms. Bujaya.
I was just going to suggest that it might be difficult to add it to the agenda just because all the timelines have passed for the February 15th agenda. We're about to publish that actually in the next day or so here. Council could accept this report for information. And I think if council wanted to add this to the spring budget session, that's an absolutely a viable option. I wasn't exactly clear if council was looking to also do something this winter. And if that is the intention, perhaps a motion to bring further options for wasn't able to follow what the immediate need would be, and maybe I'll clarify that.
Yeah, Sandy, you're breaking up, Sandy. I think there is, in my opinion, based in the room, there's support for the report as information. Yes. But Steve asked the question, well, could we do something this year? I thought, well, the best way to address that might be the committee of the whole. Next week, just see if we want to do something, here's the options, and here's how fast you can do it, and discuss that on Tuesday rather than doing it tonight. That was my objective. So if we can put it on the committee of the whole next week to see if council has any appetite to go any further, let's discuss it on Tuesday if that's an option, or we can do it tonight and drag this out. I prefer to accept as information and explore the possibility of this year on Tuesday. Any objections, council, thoughts, procedurally speaking? Just try and move this along as best I can, unless I'm reading the room wrong. Sam, you've been patient. Your hands just went up. Sam, why don't you go ahead, please, any comments you may have, followed by Councillor Barnhart, your hand's up. Is that from before or still there?
New hand.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Sorry. Great report. Thanks for the information. I mean, we're February 8th here. I think it's too late right now to try to solve anything for this year. I say we accept this as information, and then we work our way through as part of the budgeting process for next year. So I wouldn't support moving it to another agenda and losing another week and all that sort of stuff. So I think we've got the information here. It's a good start. And if council's interested in this, there are the options that we can look at for the 2023 budget. So that would be my 2 cents to help move this one along.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. Trying to help Steve out as a comment, but I'm okay moving as information moving on totally. So sorry, Kathy, is your hand up for a question or not?
No, I mean, thank you, Mayor. I had my hand up because I felt that I would not be supportive of having it at the Committee of the Whole on Tuesday, because I do think this is something to consider for next year. I think this year there's plenty of light time right now for well, maybe not everyone agrees, but I do think we've gotten through the majority of this winter without this and should move on to next year's budget.
Thank you for that. Councillor Miller, you have your hands up. Is it a new?
Yes, I've just been patiently waiting to close this. So if Mr. Lewicki needs to go first, because I see his hands up. Oh, his hands down.
Thank you. Sorry. To the mayor, I was just going to comment and say to Councillor Munckhof-Swain's point, council may want to consider that currently with the weather, I think all of our rinks are closed, and the warm weather will prolong those closures and poor ice conditions. Also with as we move towards spring, the lighting will increase outdoors at night. So I'm just wondering if there's enough time to make this worthwhile this season. Just something to consider.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Seeing no further questions, Councillor Tessier, sorry, Councillor Miller, please proceed.
Thank you. I've been patiently waiting. I think we're all saying the exact same thing here. Reading the room, I think I'm a big fan of doing something and doing it right. And I don't think we would be executing properly if we did that this year. I was going to echo exactly what Mr. Lewicki said. It's too late. The rinks are closed. The lighting's getting pushed further into the night, so it's staying brighter later. And we need time to evaluate these costs. So this is just for information at this time. I appreciate the report. I think this is a very necessary thing that we cannot lose sight of for next year. But reading the room, I think we're all in agreement that we can hold off and reevaluate for next year budget for this.
I'm good with that. Thank you very much. So Councillor Tessier, you prepared to make the motion to receive this as information, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
I move that February 8th, 2022 report options for lighting at outdoor rinks be received for information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote, please. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. Appreciate that. Next item of business is 6D, Councillor Munckhof-Swain, motion on the capital budget. I'll wait for the motion to be put up on the screen, and then Sam can make his motion and he can speak to it, and then we'll have a discussion on it. Go ahead, Sam, if you like.
Great, thank you. So I'll first move that by the May 17, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting, administration prepare a report with options for engaging council on their capital priorities prior to the presentation of the proposed capital budget.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sam, to speak to your motion.
So I'm hoping this is going to be brief. I think essentially what I'm trying to get to here is to ensure that council has a bit more voice in the capital budget process. We get through the written questions, that really improved process from the last couple of years where we submit questions to ask feedback on the budget. But it's still, I still find that it's administration's budget that's put in front of us in terms of their capital requests that they're looking for. As councillors, we get a lot of feedback from community members throughout the year, and some really good options for capital items. And what we found, what I've found personally anyway, is when we get into the budget cycle, that process, there's written questions, and then I submit a question. What would the rough cost of X be, and the impacts of it, and then the response that comes back in the written questions is, you need a motion to be able to pass this, and essentially then we run out of time. So all those ideas, they don't get fitted into the capital budget process. So what I'm trying to achieve here is ideally that there is some conversation with council where we can kind of sit down and talk through the capital budget requests, so that we can look at it and not vote on them, but much earlier in the process, kind of in the summer there, where we can go through and say, look, these are the sort of things that I'm hearing from the community around what projects we want, and then council discuss them and then give direction to administration at that point to go away and basically get a good estimate for them and what that impact could be. And so again, we wouldn't be voting on those projects. It's just what does council think? Is it worth administration spending their time to be able to go and investigate this? So I know lots of councillors have got thoughts through this budget process, but I found that once we get the budget in front of us, I'm frantically scanning to see what's in it, and I'm sometimes I'm happily surprised, and I'm like, well, I wish this would have been considered. And so what I'm trying to achieve here is to allow an additional step in the process so that council can really contribute to the budget cycle, so that we take a bit more ownership of it versus administration presenting it and me waiting for Christmas for it to show up. So I'll leave it there. I hope that there can be support here from council. Again, at this stage, we're just looking for a report from administration to come back at that May 17 Committee of the Whole, and then we can debate this much further. I don't think there is a lot of time that this would take administration to pull this report together. I think they're already kind of thinking this way anyway. So I'm hoping that there is support. I'll leave it there, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussions on the motion from council. I'm just going to scroll up and down. I see Councillor Barnhart, your hand is up. So Kathy, you have the floor
Yes,
first.
Thank you, Mayor. And if Mr. Dowler is still on the call, my question is around the long-range capital planning. And I can never remember, sorry, if I looked back in my notes, I would probably find it, whether we have approved a 3-year capital plan this time around or whether we are in the middle of that 3-year plan. Mr. Dowler, could you help me on that? Because I know we have a different process once every, I think it's every 3 years. Forgive me if it's every 5, but I think it's every 3. Help Mr. Dowler, please.
I'll try my best, Councillor Barnhart. When it comes to capital, it is a 5-year plan. Now, some of it is a little bit around semantics as to whether or not council approves the 5-year plan. I would say historically, since I've been with the organization, I think we need to do a better job and work on some improvements around our long-term capital planning. And, what you would see 1 year in terms of a 5-year view of a capital plan, we need to kind of come back to that the next year and talk to council about some of the adjustments that may have happened. And then, see a direct correlation between that plan and then what you would be asked to approve in an annual budget. So it's a long answer to your question, but 5 years for capital is the long-term view that we take.
And a follow-up, Mayor, if I may. So, Mr. Dowler, the 5 year is a rolling plan then. There's no different process that you have in mind that we would, after, like presumably with the new council, we would sooner rather than later look at that whole plan and get a sense of the priorities, because capital can't just be done on the fly, obviously. It has to be preparation, developing the design, et cetera, for some of the capital items, the larger ones. So I'm just wondering, was it in your plan already to do something different in this?
Kathy, you froze there, Kathy.
This part of your plan, Mr. Din, this motion, or is it necessary because you were planning to do something similar to that anyway?
Sorry, Kathy, you cut up quite a bit the last little while there. So I'll let Mr. Dowler speak quickly, then Sam would like to just offer a reply back to his motion. So Mr. Dowler, please, and then if you're able to speak, and then we'll go to Sam, then followed by other questions. Sorry, Kathy, you were cutting in and out quite a bit there.
Sure. I'll try and kind of provide a response to some of the questions I believe we're trying to get to. I think the short answer is the motion provides us an opportunity to put in front of council a different process around capital. Ultimately, I think when it comes to long-term planning for capital, I think it actually should be a 10-year view that we put in front of council. And people can argue that it could be even longer. But, and I think that needs to be revisited on an annual basis. So long or short answer to your question, one of your questions anyways, it would be around administration is always looking at improving the process. Capital is a big part of that, where we're looking at some improvements. And again, the motion, I think is an opportunity for us to engage with council in a conversation around what that could look like going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Dowler. Councillor Munckhof-Swain, go ahead, Sam.
Just very briefly, and at one point I was thinking about putting a budget kind of limit for this, and I get where Councillor Barnhart and Mr. Dowler are going. For these larger capital items, the multi-million dollars, those things you got to plan. I totally get that. This is more just to address the smaller things like, Bill, you wanted your pickleball courts. Like, how do we get that into the budget? Or like, what does it cost to add a trail from here to here to help feed the new dog park, etc. Like, those are the kind of smaller ones that can be dealt with in that budget cycle. And so the way that this report is framing is Mr. Dowler is absolutely right. It gives administration a chance to come back with the report. So I think this again, the voting on how we proceed with that capital budget process will occur later on at the committee of the whole. So I'm hoping that there is enough support here in the room to get administration to bring this back so we can be a bit more involved in the process. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Sam. Kathy, that answers your question, I believe. So I think Councillor Tessier's hand was up first. Then I will go to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. So Renee, you have the floor, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thanks for bringing this up, Councillor Munckhof-Swain. Obviously, I'm really pro just getting more information before making a decision, and this will give us a good feeling of what how council's feeling and administration way before we have to pass anything. The only question I have is, you know, something like an RV dump station is something that I really want to see in a capital budget. Are we going to have enough time, A, to get things in to this report, and how do we get things we want into the report?
Is that a comment or a question, Renee?
A question, a couple questions.
Okay, no problem.
So,
Mr. Dollar, would you care to comment, Mr. Dollar?
I think the one question I caught was, you know, with regards to a sandy dump and how you would get something like that in this report. If I understand correctly, what I would say is the report itself is about process, not necessarily about council making a decision on a specific item. So that would be the report that administration, as we understand the motion, would bring back. If you are looking to get a sandy dump approved or funded for this year, what I would suggest is making a motion through the budget amendment process. You know, if there's support through council and council directs administration to do it, that can be part of the 2022 capital budget.
Okay, yeah, so, but say I wanted it in the 2023 budget. I'm just looking at this. So you bring the report in May 17, 2022, which is for the next year's budget, from what I understand.
That's
how
correct.
how do we ensure, like, is there going to be a survey going out to council, or is it just administration's going to give us a report of what they believe they want in a capital budget? And is there enough time to prepare something like a sandy dump station for that report?
So the answer to your question is probably a little bit more complicated than what you want to hear at this point in time. You know, I think what I would say is reflected through the report coming back on the motion would be a perspective around how administration would suggest approaching something like this with council. You know, one scenario would be is we would, you know, set a meeting with council, either individually or as a group, where council could express their interests from a capital perspective on what they would like to see in the coming budget. Administration would take that list of items, go and cost it out. And then when administration presents a budget in, you know, October, November of that year, some of those things may be funded and some of them may not be. And so I know that may not necessarily be where Councillor Munckhof-Swain was going with this, but from an administrative standpoint, the recommendation would be still administrations based on a variety of factors. But what would be there would be what I would call unfunded capital profiles. So your sandy dump, as an example, may not be funded as part of the proposed budget coming from administration, but council would have the information on that particular item to then make a motion through their deliberations of the budget to fund it. And council can debate that and then either vote for it or against it and get it included as part of the budget. So it provides an opportunity, I think, to address what Councillor Munckhof-Swain raised around, you know, administration comes forward with a budget. There's some things in there that you'd like to see that aren't there. You have an opportunity to ask questions, but then some of the responses to those questions where we don't have enough time to give you the information. So it would at least address that part of it. You would have the information to make the decision regardless of what administration recommends as part of the budget. Perfect.
That does answer my question, so I appreciate that. And yeah, I would for sure be in support of this because I believe more information, more time's always better. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Tessier. I do believe the discussion has been favorable to this motion. I'm seeing others have their hands up, so I'm going to, at this point, I'm assuming, Sam, you've said what you need to say, so I'm going to simply at this point, Council, ask for the question on this motion, please. Please vote accordingly. And at this point, sorry, Kathy, I'm just seeing going down my screen here, and that carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. Mr. Dollar, thank you for your comments as well. Much appreciated. Having said that, it's now 7:30. For 90 minutes, I'm going to call about a 10-minute recess, and then we can get back into our next order of business, which would be 6E, and then we should be into the then closed session after that there. So at this point, I'll call a recess for 10 minutes, please. Thank you. Thank you, Administration and Council. We have had our break. We're now back live with our meeting to resume our council this evening. We are now on item number 6E, Councillor McCook's motion following us on snow removal. We'll have on the screen for you in a moment, Catherine, to have you speak to your motion, please, or make your motion, pardon me, and then speak to it, please. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my motion is that by the end of the third quarter of 2022, administration prepare a report on snow removal, providing options for service level improvements, financial implications for each option, review of snow removal best practices, and alternative ways to communicate snow removal other than by snowpack. So I guess to go off that, we've heard quite a bit from residents this year regarding snow removal, as Aaron alluded to a bit. It's also definitely been a hot topic across municipalities in our region. I recognize that this year has also been a challenging year with people off sick, as well as with the weather we've had. I also think that we may continue to see kind of the extreme weather and weather swings that we saw this year, perhaps in future years. Therefore, I wanted to ensure that as a municipality, we are prepared to deal with this, with years like this, on a regular basis. So I believe that there's always options and areas for improvement. And like an example of how we brought in the windrow solution and then had the complete removal of the snow from that. I also know that this team works really hard. So before budget time, I wanted to be able to understand what our options are in order to improve our snow removal process, and also understand perhaps any challenges the city might have. Maybe, it's an extra grader or more manpower, different technology, not sure what the options are. But secondly, I also think that a lot of frustration from residents stems from the fact that no one really understands snowpack, myself included, especially surrounding timelines related to this. So for example, if someone knows that they're a priority 4, yet their street hasn't been done all year and it's February, and then they put in a service request and they're informed that they're priority 4 street, it's not really helpful to them as a resident to understand when will my street be done. So, getting some understanding and perhaps some clarity around communicating that to residents. I understand that setting out our priorities based on snowpack because we don't know what our weather will be from one year to the next. But I also think we definitely need to communicate to our residents somehow in the moment what that means and how we will get to them. Perhaps we're working on priority 2, and if we have no additional weather, we will get to priority 4 within 2 days, or we'll get to your area within 2 days. I know we've put in some processes this winter, like spot checking areas like priority 4 areas and trying to attend to them. So perhaps that's something that we will need to do on an ongoing basis, or that will be brought forward as one of the solutions or additional things that we can do. Lastly, I also just really wanted to ensure that council had this information before budget time so we can adequately review it and have the opportunity for admin to put forward all these solutions so we can act on the solutions or proposals or put in noms in time for budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that very much. And I think it's a very sensitive topic right now for many people's minds. So it's timely. And I think your third quarter assessment for the due date is accurate and will help us for next year's budget process. It's a very good motion. I'm looking forward to supporting it once the council has a chance to talk a bit about it. So at this point, any councillors have comments or questions for Councillor McCook on her motion? I'm seeing no hands go up, so I'm pretty sure we're looking for good support here. I'll just wait 1 second. I think Sam had to leave for a second. I'll just give him a chance to come back in case he has a question. In the meantime, I will suggest, I do like this idea of where this motion is going. Give us more information for next fall's budget for 2023. One thing I had thought about doing maybe early next fall is a town hall where we talk about snow removal before the snow actually falls and help people understand our processes. This report will be very timely to that. And I'm looking forward to this vote here. I see Sam's back. He's good to go. No questions. So at this point, council, seeing no questions from anybody on this motion, I will ask you to vote on the motion, please, accordingly. And I'm seeing unanimous vote by everyone on this motion. So thank you, Catherine, for your motion, and it's carried unanimously by council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. The next motion is 6F, which is my own, advocacy for health supports in Beaumont. I'll ask for the motion to be put up on the screen, and I'll speak to it in a moment here. Thank you. I move that the mayor, on behalf of council, send a letter to Health Minister Copping advocating for the addition of a second ambulance and a new walk-in medical center for the city of Beaumont, and that the mayor, on behalf of council, advocate for these priorities when meeting with members of Legislative Assembly. Looking for council support this evening on this particular motion. It was part of my campaign to become mayor, but it's not an issue for me. It's an issue for council. And it was very important to me that we have full support of council on this initiative, which is simply to get us on the radar, as the saying goes, for the health government of Alberta, to increase our ambulance service for our city of 21,000 people, and to advocate and get eventually some kind of a walk-in medical facility here in Beaumont. I'm not expecting a full-blown hospital. We're too close to Leduc, obviously, and Edmonton, and even with Tasman, quite frankly, for hospital services, but some kind of a medical facility to give our citizens access to minor medical care if needed, and that sort of thing. So that's the intention of the motion. And I thought it was very important that council has a chance to discuss this motion in public. And I'm looking forward to having support from council on this initiative. And as far as advocacy goes, it'll be my job to make sure that we're on the radar for the budget process in the next couple of cycles with the government of Alberta. And this is not simply a letter and it's written once and forgotten about. I'll make sure that the balance of our mandate, we as council will devise a strategy with our political advisor to make sure we are capitalizing every opportunity to talk to the government about advocating for these two items. And it will not simply be a letter and that's it. It'll be an ongoing advocacy program that I'll initiate. I will execute on behalf of council with government of Alberta going forward. So that's the intent of the motion. I will entertain any questions council may have at this time, please. Councillor Tessier, please proceed.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for bringing this forward. I'm in big support of this motion. Just a question for yourself. So have we thought of, when we send this, do we have a solution for where the second ambulance can go, or that thought process? Is that something AHS is going to ask us? Because obviously the fire hall does need that bay anyway. So this would be a good opportunity for us to have a pretty good sales pitch to AHS for two ambulances in a new location.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. That'll be part of the process as well. When our Chief Director of Protective Services, Jay, gets a report back to us on our fire department needs, this will be part of that discussion as well too. So it's part of a 2 or 3 pronged approach, if you will. But the intention is to get on the radar for government of Alberta as soon as possible and get the process started. That's the main intent of the letter at this point. But your point's well taken and will be addressed as we go forward as a council. Thank you.
Great. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, because it's not I'm guessing it's not a short process. So perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. I'm going down my screen. I see Kathleen, no other hands raised at this point. All right, Council, seeing no further hands raised for questions or concerns on this motion, I will call for the vote, please. Thank you. And that motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council, for the support. The letter will be going out tomorrow, and we'll begin the advocacy process and discussion how best to promote our city for these additional facilities and services. Thank you very much. The next order of business on our agenda is 7A, Councillor Inquiries, Responses, and Reports. 7A, Councillor Barnhart, City Procedures for Advertising Civic Positions. Who will speak to this motion? Oh, give me 1 second here. Who will be speaking to this, please, from administration?
Thank you, Mayor. This actually is an information item only. This was just a response to inquiry from the last meeting.
Oh, I apologize. I wrote my note down the wrong way. I apologize for that. So any questions for administration on this information here? I'm assuming we can proceed as information.
Thank you, Mayor. Any information would be a new councillor inquiry should anyone have any questions or anything. Again, these are information items.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. Are we on the next item of business? Or pardon me, are there any additional councillor inquiries to be made at this point? Councillor Van Newkirk, I see your hand went up. I apologize, Steve. Please proceed.
No problem. I'd just like to follow up on the discussion from earlier. My inquiry would be, please provide information on how residents can most effectively provide input or comments on operational matters to administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor now, Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have a very, I hope it's not a very difficult inquiry. I didn't have a chance to give the heads up to the administration, but it's simply a question about the agendas being printed in the newspaper. I didn't realize myself that they had stopped appearing in there, and it may not have been that they did stop, but a citizen did ask me, resident did ask me why they had stopped, and I honestly didn't realize they had. So I just would like to know from the administration if that has occurred. Maybe the question is why, and is that a good idea? Because people were relying on that for information from the city.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. I've captured that councillor inquiry, and administration will get back to you with answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, administration and Councillor Barnhart. Are there any further councillor inquiries at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 8 on our agenda. CEO update. Mr. Schwartz, you have the floor, Mike.
Thank you very much, Mayor Daneluik, members of council. Just very quickly, at 5 o'clock this evening, the province announced the step 1 and step 2 and step 3 to be determined at a later date of the lifting of restrictions. The immediate effect to our organization and our services is the restriction exemption program ends at 11:59 this evening. So starting tomorrow, we've already started putting plans in place with our security guards. They will remain in our facilities and help us with mask requirements, mask enforcement. And then the task force, the admin task force, will meet tomorrow afternoon to sort through the other changes. That is the one that's going to affect us immediately. They also immediately made changes to entertainment venues and small venues. All restrictions have been removed except for masks, of course. And effective February 13th, students will no longer be required to wear masks in K-12, and children 12 and under will no longer be required to wear masks, period. And that comes into effect on Sunday evening at 11:59 again. Step 2 is March 1st, which when you're looking at the data, or we're looking at the steps, depending on the data, could mean almost everything removed except for the isolation requirements and a couple of measures that are in their continuing care facilities. As an organization and a service provider, we're going to take our steps gradually as we come out of this. The notion of lifting the REP tomorrow morning, we have no choice. We have no authority to implement it. So we will follow the Alberta government regulations or restrictions, and we've done that all the way through. So more information to follow. We will get communications out to both the community and to council. That's all I had for an update.
So Mike, if I may, I saw your email, but my phone rang a minute before council began. I had a chance to open the email about the restrictions being lifted. So just to clarify, if you don't mind, for sake of clarity purposes, so does step 1, which begins at midnight tonight, which is very short notice, as we all were surprised by that or not expecting perhaps. So are double vaccinations proof of required to enter our buildings as of tomorrow? I'm
No,
assuming,
they're not.
just to
No,
clarify, they're
No.
not.
No, they were required to wear a mask.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those people listening home, and just to doubly clarify, as of tomorrow in Alberta, going to a public building like our rec center, for example, you don't have to prove vaccination, but you must wear a mask.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. That's what I thought you said, but I just wanted extra clarity because some people are listening at home, and we have work to do with administration to implement this very quickly. So on behalf of council, I will congratulate administration already for the work they'll be doing the next couple of days to get this new restriction program revised and moved on. So it does require Johnny on the spot work by you guys. So I will preemptively thank you for your administration's work on getting this done as soon as possible. So any questions? I have the question for Mr. Schwartz on his report this evening. Having said that, if I may ask a question then, administration or through you, Mike, the REP program, when we implemented it, did we not pass a bylaw to implement the REP program, or did we not? I'm trying to remember now.
It wasn't required because we're following the provincial restrictions. If you recall, we had a choice. We could go to 1/3 capacity or choose the REP, which we brought a report to council, and council suggested that let's implement measures aligned with the provincial direction that would allow as many people as possible to use our facilities. And
right.
So that's the direction that we use to adopt the REP. For those who didn't adopt the REP, the 1/3 capacity is no longer required. So it's another effect of the changes.
Thanks, Mike. And thanks, council, for my patience there, because I was thinking we had passed a bylaw to implement the REP program according to the Alberta health regulations, but we didn't actually do a bylaw. So there's no bylaw to repeal then, which is what my question was getting at. So
yeah, that's okay.
I appreciate the procedural clarification for me. Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions for our CEO. Oh, Councillor Miller, please go ahead.
Sorry, thanks. I'll be quick. I just had a quick question because I'm with you, Mayor, on some of these things. They're so intertwined with all these restrictions. I forget what, I guess my question is, do we have a Beaumont specific mask bylaw, or did we just always follow provincial guidelines? And that being said, after March 1st, after it's lifted, is that essentially lifted in the city of Beaumont?
Great question, Councillor Miller. Beaumont at one point in time had a bylaw. We let it expire. I believe it expired December 31st of last year. And at that point in time, when we put out our bylaw, if you recall, there was a period where there was a lot of pressure on the province to do so, and they didn't. So the region kind of formed together and came up with our own bylaw. We then let ours expire December 31st because the province did what we thought they should have done in the beginning. So there's no requirement to repeal it. We just let it expire.
Thank you. So, for the questions for the CEO, move on to the next part of our agenda, which is agenda item number 9, notice of the motion. Any notice of motion coming from any council members this evening to be presented? Seeing none, we'll proceed to the next item on agenda, which is item number 10, closed session. So at this point, I'll ask for the motion to be read. Councilman Newkirk, would you care to read the motion to go into closed session, please?
You bet. I move that council meet in private to discuss matters protected from disclosure under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy FOIP Act, Section 17, 24, and 25. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion on the motion from council, please? Seeing none, please vote accordingly. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We will take a 5-minute break while we reset the room and to begin our closed session. Thank you. We'll return back to out of closed session to wrap up the meeting. Thank you, administration and council, and those listening at home. We are back live from our closed session, and with that, I will make the following motion. I'm going to press on the screen. Thank you. I move that the Chief Administrative Officer contract be amended as discussed in the closed session, and that council direct the mayor to sign on behalf of council. Is there discussion on the motion, please? Seeing none, I will ask council to vote accordingly, please, with your voting buttons. And I see that motion is passing unanimously. Thank you, council. That concludes our business this evening for the council meeting of February 8th of 2022. I'm just checking my notes to make sure I don't miss anything. Or not. At that point, we are now adjourned. Thank you, council administration, for your time this evening. Enjoy the rest of your night, however short it may be.
Thanks,
Enjoy your
everybody.
night. Good night.
Have a good night.